Yo, what is up YouTube? It's the Deli, back with another Destiny 2 build video, and today we're going to go over my Solar Warlock build for Onslaught. This build is going to allow you to be the ultimate medic slash support character. You're going to constantly be able to give your teammates and yourself a 35% damage buff. You're going to be able to constantly heal them and basically have your rift up 24/7. Let's take a look at the build. Alright, so hopping into the build, we're going to be using the Boots of the Assembler exotic boots. These exotic boots armor perk is Blessing of Order. Standing in a healing rift creates noble seekers that seek out allies that are not in a rift and heal them. Standing in an empowering rift creates noble seekers that grant both you and your ally a damage bonus. Each time a noble seeker finds one of your allies, the duration of your rift is briefly extended while you are standing in it. Provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of the hand cannon Lumina. So these boots are very good for Onslaught because you're going to constantly be healing your teammates, and since you're going to be standing in your rift, it's going to stay up like 24/7, and by the time it does run out, you'll have another rift ready to go. And with our exotic weapon of choice, the synergy is going to be very, very good. So let's take a look at our exotic weapon of choice. We're going to be using the hand cannon Lumina. The hand cannon Lumina's intrinsic trait is Noble Rounds. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants. Absorbing a remnant converts your next hip-fired shot into an ally-seeking noble round and partially refills the magazine. It also has the trait Blessing of the Sky. Using a noble round on an ally heals them and grants both you and them weapon bonus damage for a short duration. So this damage bonus is 35%. That is very, very good, and you're constantly going to have noble rounds since we're running Boots of the Assembler. You can see the synergy already. It's just a very, very strong combo. And if you do have the Catalyst, you gain 2 remnants per final blow instead of 1. So you're always going to have the full stacks of remnants ready to go. Alright, now hopping into the super abilities, aspects, and fragments, we're going to be using Well of Radiance for our super. For our abilities, for our class ability, we're going to be on Healing Rift. I like to use Healing Rift in this build because when we create our Noble Seekers, it's going to heal our teammates, and we don't need to empower them with a damage buff because we're going to be using Lumina anyway, so I don't think Empowering Rift is really worth it. For our jump and melee, these are both preference. I like to use Burst Glide for my jump, and for my melee, I like Celestial Fire. It's a little more range than Incinerator Snap, so you don't have to play so up close. And for our grenade of choice, we're going to be using Fusion Grenade. This has a really low base cooldown, and with one of our fragments, we're going to be able to use it quite a bit. Jumping into the aspects, our first aspect of choice is going to be Touch of Flame. Your healing, solar, firebolt, and fusion grenades have enhanced functionality. Since we're on fusion grenade, it's going to be able to explode twice, doing a nice chunk of damage. And we're going to be pairing this aspect with the aspect Heat Rises. You can fire weapons in melee and throw grenades while gliding. Hold to consume your grenade, gaining Heat Rises and releasing a burst of healing energy that cures nearby allies. The strength of the burst is increased when a healing grenade is consumed. Final blows while airborne increase the duration of Heat Rises and grants melee energy. So I like to use Heat Rises because if you're ever in a pinch, you could just consume your grenade and it's going to cure you and your teammates, and it's also going to proc one of our fragments. This is a very strong aspect in this build. Now let's take a look at our fragments. Our first fragment of choice is going to be Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. This also gives a +10 to our recovery stat. I like Ember of Searing because we're going to be scorching our targets with our grenade and our melee ability, and when we create fire sprites give grenade energy back as well. And since we're defeating scorched enemies, we're going to be getting melee energy too, so that's going to pair very well with the aspect Heat Rises for even more melee energy. And our second fragment of choice is going to be Ember of Beams. Your solar super projectiles have stronger target acquisition. This gives a +10 to our intellect stat. You could sub this out for a different fragment. I just like this because I get a +10 to my intellect stat. For our third fragment of choice, we're going to be using Ember of Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration. Picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. This also gives a +10 to our resilience. So this is a nice fragment here because we're going to be able to create fire sprites via our first fragment, Ember of Searing. So when we pick up fire sprites, we're going to be getting grenade energy and getting restoration as well. This also gives a +10 to our resilience, so that's also a good bonus. And our final fragment of choice is going to be Ember of Benevolence. Applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants increased grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for a short duration. This is a -10 to our discipline, but this fragment is very strong in this build. This kind of brings it all together. So when we apply the damage buff via Lumina Noble rounds, we're going to be able to proc Ember of Benevolence. Whenever we consume our grenade and apply Cure, we're going to be able to proc Ember of Benevolence as well. This is going to apply a 400% to our ability regeneration, our grenade regeneration, our melee regeneration. So we're going to constantly have our abilities up at all times. So like I said earlier, when you're in your rift, by the time your rift runs out, you're going to have another rift ready to go. You're going to have your grenade up at all times, your melee up at all times. This is a very strong fragment for this medic build. Now taking a look at our weapons of choice, we already went over our exotic Lumina. For our secondary, I like to use the Eremite. This has Envious Assassin and Control Burst, so I'm always going to have 15 shots in the mag since I'm going to mainly be using my Lumina or my heavy weapon. You could sub this out for something else. I just really like the Eremite because it also does a nice burst damage against like chunkier targets or even like a boss that rushes you down in the boss room. For our heavy of choice, I'm using the Avalanche with Substance and Incandescent. You could sub this out for any machine gun. I like to use this since it's solar and I'll be able to proc one of our artifact mods. And then when I'm in the boss room, I like to sub this out for the Cataclysmic. Linears do really good on some of these bosses. When you get rushed down by some of the bosses that like to get up close, that's when I like to use Eremite. Alright, now let's take a look at some of the artifact mods that pair very well with this build. First artifact mod you're going to want to have is Flint Striker. Rapid solar weapon precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows grant radiant. So this is very nice. So when we get, rapid kills with our machine gun or our Eremite, we're going to be able to make ourselves radiant. And this pairs very well with the next artifact mod, Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply scorch to unscorched combatants. Now this is very good because it's going to proc our fragment Ember of Searing. So when we defeat scorched combatants, we're going to create fire sprites and give ourselves melee energy. Very strong combo. Now the third artifact mod we can run is Torch. While radiant, deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by strand and stasis debuffs. So this is good, so if you're in matchmaking and you have somebody running stasis or strand, we're going to get a nice little debuff on those enemies. Our fourth artifact perk we're going to want to run is Heart of the Flame. Casting your solar super grants nearby allies radiant and increases the damage of your super for each nearby ally. This is really nice, another way to just apply radiant to your teammates. The next artifact perk is going to be Revitalizing Blast. Causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. So this is really nice. Since I like to use Celestial Fire and it's more range than Incinerator Snap, we're going to be able to apply Weaken to bosses or champions from a little further back. And this is going to apply a 15% debuff. And our last artifact perk that pairs very well in this build is Rays of Precision. While Radiant, Solar Precision Final Blows cause combatants to ignite. Alright, now let's take a look at our armor mods. On our helmet, we're going to be using one Kinetic Siphon. Since we're going to really be using our Lumina a lot, we're going to be able to create Orbs of Power with that. Our next mod we're going to be using is Radiant Light. Casting your super causes nearby allies to also increase their current armor charge by 1. Allies that have a different subclass element from you increase armor charge by 2. And the last armor mod of choice we're going to be using is Font of Wisdom. You gain a bonus to intellect while you have any armor charge. Armor charges decay over time. So this is really nice because we're sitting at 70 intellect. So when we do have armor charge, we're actually going to have 100 intellect. We're going to be able to get that super back a lot faster. On our gauntlets, we're going to be using one kinetic loader so we can reload that Lumina faster. We're going to be using one impact induction. Causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. This is nice, so when we shoot our Celestial Fire out, we're going to get a little bit of grenade cooldown. And our last mod on our gauntlets is going to be Focusing Strike. Grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a powered melee attack. So on our chest armor, I always like to run Concussive Dampener since there's a lot of AoE damage in the game. But these here can be switched out for anything else. I like to use it, depending on what threat is in the activity I'm playing. So, you can switch these out for anything else. And on our leg armor, we're going to be using 1 harmonic scavenger so we can get some more ammo when we pick up special or heavy bricks for our solar weapons. We're going to be using 1 recuperation, replenishes health each time you pick up an orb of power. We're going to get a nice little chunk of health. We're also going to be using stacks on stacks. Picking up an orb of power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge. This is nice, so we have multiple stacks at once and we'll be able to have Font of Wisdom and our other font mods up more often. On our Warlock bond, we're going to be using 1 bomber, so when we use our rift, we're going to get a little nice grenade cooldown. We're going to be using 1 font of restoration, so when we do have armor charge, this is going to give a plus 30 to our recovery stat, so I'm going to be sitting at 100 recovery. So technically in this build, I'm going to have quad 100s, which is really nice. And our final armor mod is going to be time dilation. Your decay and armor charge has a longer duration, so this just plays into it even more. I'm going to be able to have Font of Restoration and Font of Wisdom up even longer. Alright, and that is going to do it for the build. You can see all the armor mods I used right here. All the artifact perks right here. My stat distribution. I really like to focus on resilience and discipline for this build. And then I would say intellect and recovery are the next most important ones. You can see all my weapons here and the respective roles. Also, if you're interested in my Warlock fashion, my drip, this is the shaders I used and the armor pieces. Alright, if you tried this build out and liked it, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Destiny 2 Onslaught build videos coming very soon. I will have the dim link down in the description below. Thanks again for watching. My name's The Deli, and peace.